Good morning. Thank you for joining us here today. We are Divorce Solutions of Connecticut, and we're looking forward to spending the next half hour with you talking about the collaborative divorce process. We're going to start out by just giving you an overview and highlighting some of the unique aspects of collaborative divorce, and then we'll expand on those in our discussion afterwards. So when we think about collaborative divorce, what are the most important things that you need to realize first off is that this is a completely voluntary process. So both of you need to be invested in the process in order for it to work. It's a non-adversarial process, so you don't need to go to court. You're really in control of how quickly things move or not, and you have some creative flexibility in terms of problem solving. Importantly, in terms of this non-adversarial piece is the fact that it's an interest-based process. So what that means is that you will be working together to generate to think about what your overarching goals and interests are and to generate options to address those, as opposed to an adversarial process where you tend to be positional. You ingrain yourself in opposing views and you use a lot of your energy trying to wear down the other person. This is a multidisciplinary process. So what you see on your screen, I think, are the 4 people that would be on your team: 2 attorneys, a financial neutral, and a mental health neutral, reflecting the typical issues that come up in a divorce: emotional, financial, and legal. It's a process that is really applies to people who want to foster collaboration, who want to preserve relationships, and want to protect their children from emotional fallout from the process. It's different from mediation, which is also a non-adversarial process, where in mediation you have one neutral mediator, maybe 2. In collaborative divorce, you will be each be represented by your own attorney. And this appeals to people who value the process, but may not necessarily feel comfortable without having their own individual representation. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Lisa, and we will each talk about our individual roles in this process as part of the team.
Thank you, Traci. That's a really good introduction to the collaborative process. The role of the financial professional is, as Traci said, a neutral role. If I had one word to describe my responsibility, I would use the word educate. So my role is to educate the clients on their current financial picture, putting together a lifestyle analysis showing how they lived as a married couple, to educate them on the assets that they have in terms of liquidity, the tax effect of different assets, and any restrictions or rules that apply to specific assets. And also to talk about the different types of income and how their income will affect a division of that. A W-2 wage earner's income is very different than a 1099 consultant's or a business owner's. So in that part of the education, it's looking at where they are currently and putting together a report or a budget report of what their current expenses and income are. I always say that it's much easier to edit than it is to create. And a lot of times people will have be overwhelmed with this beginning part of the process. Where do I start? How do I get this information? What period of time do you need? And so if we just put together where they are right now, it's a lot easier to look at that and say, okay, what will remain the same and what will change as we disentangle our finances and manage them independently. The second part of the education process is really helping to prepare the clients and look at the different options that they have to meet their specific goals and interests that Traci mentioned earlier. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what an interest is and how this process addresses that later on. To talk to the clients about the resources that are there to support their interests and goals, and to develop what we call what-if scenarios. What happens if I do this? How will that impact my financial future? The fear that people have when they are going through this process is the fear of the unknown. And so if we remove that unknown and people know what plan they need to follow in order to reach a certain objective or a goal, that takes away the the uncertainty and the fear of the unknown. And then to help the clients, once those options have been analyzed and the scenarios have been considered, to help them look at what decisions they may have to make. Is it feasible? What is the financial impact? And then help them to transition from the household that has supporting one household, the income, and then how do they disentangle and then support two households on that same amount. Preparing the documents that would be submitted with the agreement is another part of my role, where I would provide the schedule for the division of assets, the financial affidavits, and the child support guidelines. So we're going to talk a little bit more about all those little pieces as we move forward. Brendan, would you like to start with talking about the role of the attorney?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. So in collaborative, the role of the lawyer really is to kind of be maybe secondary or supplementary to the neutral roles, and redefine what kind of advocacy looks like when we're doing this collaboratively. So I kind of consider it almost a guide to, of course, my specific client, but also the entire team at times. We identify and work through different tensions, possible miscommunications that could have occurred, and give some structure and support to conversations that might have been difficult for the participants or the clients when the full team wasn't there to support them. We can do this by kind of generating flexible ideas, helping to have appropriate agreement options and language that tends to be generated in good discussions with both of the neutrals. And the lawyers are there to make sure that, again, it could stay focused and achievable and clearly written out, and something that can be understood and relied on. But it really is that idea of the team effort, and not just guiding your client, but really as a lawyer being open to helping the other attorney's client feel comfortable and heard, really working together, which is a unique piece of it.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Brendan, is, it is a process of cooperation. I mean, you each have your own individual attorneys, but we're operating in a much different way than we do in the traditional setting. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and did traditional exclusively for the first half of my career. And once I learned about collaborative and got trained, I thought that it was such an incredibly smart approach that really addressed all the issues you're going to be dealing with as you go through a divorce, which is represented here on the screen by the professionals. It's an emotional process. This is your family. This is your financial future. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of emotional undercurrents. Certainly it's a financial process, because what is your financial situation going to be? Everybody feels uncertain, and what's the outcome going to be, and am I going to be okay? And obviously there's a legal component in terms of the legal process and what a court might be looking for. And so the legal process is the backdrop to it, and our role as attorneys are certainly to give you that context, to provide you with kind of the background of what is the court looking for, what needs to be in your agreement, what needs to be addressed, and how we go about addressing those. The distinct difference is that the two lawyers are utilizing those interests and goals that are established initially and individually, and trying to come up with an agreement that really, to the best of all of our abilities, addresses those established goals and interests that we'll often refer back to, so that each party feels that it was a fair process and that they have been treated fairly. And so you get that support that you need without the overly positional dynamic that is just inherent in the traditional divorce process when you go through the court. And so we work in a much different role, but always with the eye towards providing you and your spouse with the support you need to enable you to ultimately make those decisions. And that's what gets back to, I think, what Traci said, is that ultimately this process allows you each to make informed decisions based on all the input that you're getting, but you decide together with our assistants what the best options are to bring you to a place where you can finalize it and feel that what you have come up with is fair to each of you and what is best for your family.
Yeah, and I think when that's the focus of the team, it really allows lawyers, when they kind of wrap their heads around the concept, to be less protective of the client in a way that doesn't allow good options to be generated or unique ideas to come up, or a good idea is said in a way inadvertently that makes somebody feel attacked or anxious and not receptive to the logic of it or the emotional stability of it. And the team element is what allows lawyers to do that well and have their clients still feel protected without having to kind of use overly aggressive language or things that might be misconstrued as aggression. So again, that's the lawyer's different role here is all the benefit of having the advice and the understanding, minus kind of the headwinds that we create with best of intentions, sometimes in other processes.
Absolutely. And Traci, you want to explain your role a little bit more?
Sure. As a neutral mental health professional on the team, I like to start out by explaining what I won't be doing. I won't be engaging in psychotherapy. I won't be diagnosing. My role on the team, there's a couple different aspects to it. I will be a facilitator and a manager of the process. So I'm going to be working in the meetings and behind the scenes to make sure things are moving ahead smoothly and on schedule. And we want to be continually moving forward and not stagnating. Part of that will involve me helping you with communicating effectively, managing any emotions that come up. And in order to do that, I'd like to meet with you at the beginning of the process to start to get to know you, understand the issues and dynamics involved, understand any emotional trigger points and any communication difficulties that you have, which most couples have. So with that knowledge, that will inform my role as your coach and facilitator. And it can help me to step in during those times when people are feeling vulnerable or not really understanding, and helping you to manage what you're feeling so you can think clearly about what is being presented, as opposed to focusing on the emotional piece that's inevitably going to be going on. In addition, I will help you craft a parenting plan, and one that is developmentally appropriate for your kids, depending upon how many you have and their different ages. We may need to develop different plans for different children, and that's not uncommon. And really, finally, my goal for each team meeting and for the process itself is to help you get through with dignity and respect, help you to communicate with each other in a way that, maintains, allows you to continue with your relationship in a reconfigured way, in a way that it's civil, so that you can work together to co-parent effectively and really not have any concerns about potentially crossing paths in the future. You feel like you can at least manage yourselves appropriately.
The coach's role is really so important and so critical, not only for the clients, for you, but also for the team. And the coach will really, or the mental health professional will really try and work with the professionals to make sure that everyone is really working together and have a cohesive front to work with the client. So Traci, thank you for sharing that. I think that's just as important as the work that you do with the clients.
Thank you for bringing that up, Lisa. I actually like to meet with the team before meetings for about 15 minutes and after, so we can have a plan going in and debrief afterwards to see what worked and what didn't work, and whether there are any miscommunications going on within the team. So thank you.
And that's a really important point, because it brings up the question of how does the team get started, or how do the clients even begin with this process? And the clients can come in, or you can, I'm speaking to the clients, you can come in to the process with any of the professionals. So someone may come to Brendan first, or Lynn, or Traci, or me. And then we would make a determination after meeting with these people and talking about the different options that they have. If they decide on collaborative and wanting to pursue collaborative, we've already had an opportunity to get to know these clients a little bit and think about what professionals may work best with them and their personalities, but also with the team as a whole. So having that communication, good communication with the team, is a very important place to start. And you as clients should interview the people that we give you. We would always give you a list and then tell you, to go and interview these people as you would interview any other professional for any other service. So that's a pretty important part. of starting the case. The basic steps or the intake process of getting the information on, the children, or is there a business, the role of that the spouses have had, are there any biases? Those are all important things to know and consider when you're putting together the professional team, and then also the people that you want to work with. You're going to be telling your story, so you want to make sure that you're comfortable with the person and persons that you're telling it to.
And just to follow up on that, Lisa, just as far as the cost, because I'm sure that, people who are considering, what process they want to use might get, want to know how is the cost handled in terms of a collaborative. Each one of us have our own separate retainer letters and fee arrangements. It's not one single group. And so each professional set has their own hourly rate and their own retainer. We're going to talk a little bit further on about the cost effectiveness and how it works in a way that makes sense in terms of kind of moving forward. But just to kind of dovetail in what you said about, putting together the team, is that that it is very cost effective. We'll cover that a little bit in a few minutes, and that each individual professional has their own arrangement.
Right, that's a good point. Maybe you or Brendan also want to just add that even though we all have our individual retainers, that everyone signs a collaborative participation agreement, so that
Yes.
everyone, has the same information, is on the same page, knows what to expect from each professional and what we expect from you, the client.
That's an important point that's in the, the participation agreement. Once the team is set, is something that's circulated that everybody reads and reviews and signs on to. And it gives, it buttresses what some of the initial discussions are about how collaborative works. And one of the really important pledges that everybody agrees to is a non-litigation pledge. And that means that, we're going to work through your case, your issues, together and breakout groups, and great breakout meetings with the individual professionals, and then back as a team. But we're going to do that through discussion and working towards finalizing it based again on those goals and interests. And we're not going to resort to court. That's not an option in our repertoire, but we have a lot of other tools available to help us get through the obstacles that you may encounter. I mean, doing the case in a collaborative approach doesn't necessarily mean the case is going to be easy. It's just a different approach in working through those obstacles.
Yeah, I think that collaborative agreement is a good segue to the first full team meeting, because I think it is actually kind of starts out as a focal point in the beginning, just recommitting to why we've chosen collaborative, and kind of setting the tone, important groundwork for the rest of the whole process when the team comes together. And we do that by establishing interests and goals. And this is contrasted to kind of typical reactive or fear-based positions that can tend to keep folks rigid and limit creative thinking. So each side in this first meeting really gets to speak to their feelings and express what their needs are, talk about what they're afraid of and what might be causing anxiety at the beginning of the process, and what their goal is to alleviate that or to address it. Crucially, I think it's also an opportunity to begin really actively listening to the other side and what they're saying, what they might be afraid of, or what they see in a very similar light. And ideally identifying overlapping mutual interests. And that's really what becomes the efficiency and the cohesive part of collaborative when it works that way. This idea of speaking to your direct fears and anxieties and listening allows you, in a way that doesn't always unfold as easily in a traditional model, to really hear it once and identify what might be a possibility from the very beginning, as opposed to having, in a litigation context, just talking to your lawyer individually and not necessarily being able to so readily identify overlapping objectives because it's said in two separate conversations and doesn't always translate as neatly, even when it's there and a possibility.
Well, and just to follow up on that, Brendan, I think we start with the team meeting, we establish the goals and interests that we refer back to a number of times during the process as we work through your case. But also from there, you will have individual meetings with professionals that you see on your, as an example here of a team, you'll have individual meetings with Traci regarding, communication issues, the parenting plan, if necessary, and so forth. You'll be meeting with Lisa. She'll be gathering, collecting, and developing the financial piece. So there's always progress being made. And then we come back together as a team once all of that work is done. And we are in communication with one another in the interim. And we also usually do a professionals meeting, as we said, maybe directly before a full team meeting. But we're in communication with one another so that we know where each professional is in the process and when it makes sense to have a team meeting. So Traci, did you want to follow up on that in terms of what those breakouts are and what?
We talk about the second team meeting?
Yeah, what it would look like when we came back to a second.
Right. So we come to the second team meeting. You've now thought about your overarching goals and interests. And there are two parts to the second meeting. We're going to start generating options. So think about a big brainstorming session to think about all the possible ways that you might support those overarching goals and interests. And you may have a few ideas in mind, but we really want to think about as many options as possible to make sure both of your interests are being met. And then the second piece is really more of a planning meeting to think about information gathering. What information do we need and how is it best to go about doing that? And the financial piece is often a big part of that.
And there can be a great lag time between the full team meetings, which is one of the, we touched on, Lynn, you touched on the cost effectiveness of the process. And this is where it can be demonstrated. So the team meetings are really an opportunity for everyone to come together to do some brainstorming and option building. But in between the first team meeting or a couple of the first meetings where you're talking about interest and what's really most important to you, you're working with Traci on the parenting plan. You're getting the legal advice from your independent attorneys, and you're working with me on making sure that all of the data that we're gathering and that we're going to work with is accurate and complete. So you're only working with the professional that has the expertise in that area for the need that you have at that time. And then once all of that is put together, everyone can feel confident that they have the knowledge and they have the information that they need to start to negotiate in a very effective way. And so that's a really critical piece to making this process work. And when you have all of that and you have all of the pieces that you need, it's very smooth to come up with these different options. And no option has to be eliminated because you're just throwing things out there. And then it's like trying things on and seeing what fits and what you look best in and what feels best. And that's kind of what the option building is. And then you narrow things down to get to an option that works for you and your family, taking into consideration, all of your interests and goals. And Brendan, I don't remember the saying that you have, but it's something about melding the interest and the options that that really speaks to this process and how it all comes together. And you're looking like you don't remember what it is either, because you say so many good things.
It's true.
I
want to write them down. Oh, that was good, Brendan.
No, it's just that right. People kind of tend to, I think, express things as like a position, and when you have it, it's just an interest and the options from it. Again, it comes off and is perceived, less defensively, and you can actually kind of look at the strengths of it on its merits as opposed to things that are said in a positional nature. So I think when you have identified interest and then you look at the options, you can articulate, and everyone remembers having listened in the beginning and shared equally how the actual option may or may not meet that interest. And then you can tailor the two and say, this actually meets that interest better than maybe what I thought my original position or ask would have been. Now that I kind of can see these different positions, like you said, trying them on and saying, now that I see that, and now that I kind of have gone and examined it, that looks like it meets the need I have. That addresses the interest I stated in the beginning. So it's being open to flexibility in that way.
Well, I think that's one thing that the collaborative provides so much information over the course of the process, that the learning curve is remarkable to see where people start from and how little they know. I mean, this whole process is an unknown, except to those that do it for a living. So you're going in and you've never been through this, or, so what's involved in it? You have 1,000 questions and little answers when you first start, but each one of these professionals that you see on your screen are guiding you in their individual areas of expertise. And so that with that knowledge brings eliminates so much of the fear that Brendan was talking about, the fear-based kind of negotiation reaction is, and it gets the ties into like my informed decision-making. Like you then have the information you need to decide which option between the two of you is the best fit. I like Lisa's analogy, because when we run options, you get to actually see, okay, if I do option A, this is what it's going to look like in a way that takes the unknown out of it. You get to see it. There's give and take in every option. So everybody's going to make concessions. That's the reality. It's the reality in the traditional sense, in the traditional model as well. So you're going to have to make concessions, but you're going to have a real good sense of the concessions that you're making and what you're getting in return. And just to add quickly, as far as the legal process, I mean, the wonderful thing about some of the changes that came about through COVID is you're now able to get your divorce if you reach an agreement without ever having to step foot in a courtroom. The lawyers, as part of their work, will draft up your agreement that you ultimately come to in this process. We'll prepare all the paperwork that the court wants, and then we get to submit it into court. And we get an approval, and you and your spouse never have to go into the courtroom, which is, a great thing, because it takes that, that's a very stressful, anxiety provoking situation. So they really have made some changes that have assisted us in being able to eliminate that piece of it as well.
I see we're coming to the end of our webinar. Are there any things that people feel like we need to address before we wrap up?
I think the one thing that I would say to keep in mind is that, equitable and what you decide, it doesn't always have to mean equal. It doesn't have, you shouldn't compare your divorce to your cousin's divorce or your parents' divorce or your friend's divorce.
Right.
It's really, yours to craft, and you are the one that is really best suited to make the decisions, because you know your family better than anyone else. So, I think that's really important to keep in mind.
That's what I would say, just to follow up on that, is that the great thing about a collaborative process, which is a voluntary process, is that we really get to tailor the options and the outcome to you and your spouse and your family. And I think that's a great benefit to have when you're going through what is a very unnerving and uncertain process when it starts. Anything else that anyone can think of that we didn't address?
Does Brendan have some wise closing words for us?
No. I think we covered a lot of ground now. Thank you.
Yeah, we did.
It's a wrap. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Found that to be somewhat informative and impart some information on a process that's starting to gain a lot of momentum here, which is a wonderful thing for those of us that practice in it.
CCND is a wonderful resource.
It is.
For clients to get the information that they need, and then also to have all the professionals that practice in this area and are dedicated to this process to reach out to. So
absolutely. Great. Well, thank you.